وآل محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. واذكر في الكتاب مريم إذ انتبذت من أهلها مكانا شرقيا فاتخذت من دونهم حجابا فأرسلنا إليها روحنا فتمثل لها بشرا سويا قالت إني أعوذ بالرحمن منك إن كنت تقيا قال إنما أنا رسول ربك لأهب لك غلاما زكيا قالت أنى يكون لي غلام ولم يمسسني بشر ولم أك بغيا قال كذلك قال ربك هو علي هين ولنجعله آية للناس ورحمة منا وكان أمرا مقضيا فحملته فانتبذت به مكانا قصيا فأجاءها المخاض إلى جذع النخلة قالت يا ليتني مت قبل هذا وكنت نسيا منسيا فناداها من تحتها ألا تخافي قد جعل ربك تحتك سريا وهزي إليك بجذع النخلة تساقط عليك رطبا جنيا فكلي واشربي وقري عينا فإما ترين من البشر أحدا فقولي إني نذرت للرحمن صوما فلن أكلم اليوم إنسيا فأتت به قومها تحمله قالوا يا مريم لقد جئت شيئا فريا يا أخت هارون ما كان أبوك امرأ سوء وما كانت أمك بغيا فأشارت إليه قالوا كيف نكلم من كان في المهد صبيا قال إني عبد الله آتاني الكتاب وجعلني نبيا وجعلني مباركا أينما كنت وأوصاني بالصلاة والزكاة ما دمت حيا وبرا بوالدتي ولم يجعلني جبارا شقيا والسلام علي يوم ولدت ويوم أموت ويوم أبعث حيا ذلك عيسى ابن مريم قول الحق الذي فيه يمترون ما كان لله أن يتخذ من ولد سبحانه إذا قضى أمرا فإنما يقول له كن فيكون وإن الله ربي وربكم فاعبدوه هذا صراط مستقيم فاختلف الأحزاب من بينهم فويل للذين كفروا من مشهد يوم عظيم أسمع بهم وأبصر يوم يأتوننا لكن الظالمون اليوم في ضلال مبين وأنذرهم يوم الحسرة إذ قضي الأمر وهم في غفلة وهم لا يؤمنون إنا نحن نرث الأرض ومن عليها وإلينا يرجعون واذكر في الكتاب إبراهيم إنه كان صديقا نبيا إذ قال لأبيه يا أبت لم تعبد ما لا يسمع ولا يبصر ولا يغني عنك شيئا يا أبت إني قد جاءني من العلم ما لم يأتك فاتبعني أهدك صراطا سويا يا أبت لا تعبد الشيطان إن الشيطان كان للرحمن عصيا يا أبت إني أخاف أن يمسك عذاب من الرحمن فتكون للشيطان وليا قال أراغب أنت عن آلهتي يا إبراهيم لئن لم تنته لأرجمنك واهجرني مليا قال سلام عليك سأستغفر لك ربي إنه كان بي حفيا وأعتزلكم وما تدعون من دون الله وأدعو ربي عسى ألا أكون بدعاء ربي شقيا فلما اعتزلهم وما يعبدون من دون الله وهبنا له إسحاق ويعقوب وكلا جعلنا نبيا ووهبنا له من رحمتنا وجعلنا لهم لسان صدق عليا ووهبنا لهم من رحمتنا وجعلنا لهم لسان صدق عليا واذكر في الكتاب موسى إنه كان مخلصا وكان رسولا نبيا وناديناه من جانب الطور الأيمن وقربناه نجيا ووهبنا له من رحمتنا أخاه هارون نبيا واذكر في الكتاب إسماعيل إنه كان صادق الوعد وكان رسولا نبيا وكان يأمر أهله بالصلاة والزكاة وكان عند ربه مرضيا صدق الله العلي العظيم
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
Thank you for that beautiful recitation. We will now be pausing the program for Salat. So if you could properly make your way to the back so we could prepare for that. Thank you.
And the HSP team come forward.
Can you stay here? Are you going to stay here? Use this. Let's see. They're going to clutch. They're outclassed.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
Thank you. Before we start the debate, I would like to thank you all for your donations. Without them, we wouldn't be able to sustain and continue these programs for our community. To give you an understanding, each program costs roughly around $400 to $500 to run, so your support is vital to us. If you are interested in supporting us, you can either donate on a one-off basis as a regular donor, whether that's fortnight or monthly. Donations can be as little or as much as you'd like. If you'd like any more information, then please feel free to approach one of our team members tonight, and we will have our details displayed at the end of tonight's program. We will now be beginning the most exciting part of tonight. Tonight we have two teams debating a topic that we are all affected by. From the students in school, to the parents with children, to those thinking about having kids. Tonight's topic is, are Islamic schools better than non-Islamic schools? While I am sure we all have our opinions, let's listen to the research done by our two teams today. On our affirmative team, Haddad's school pack, we have Yasser, Haydar and Nate. And on our opposition, Rusul and the Noors. To no surprise, we have Noor Maki, Noor Wadlu and Rusul. Tonight's rules are simple. We will begin with the first affirmative speaker, then the opposition, and so on. Speaking between 4 to 6 minutes. We will have one knock at 4 minutes, two knocks at 5 minutes, and they will be cut off at 6 minutes. The teams have been briefed on all the rules, and if there are any rule breakers, they will lose 10% of their votes. Voting will take place after all speakers have concluded, and the winners will be announced shortly afterwards. Lastly, I would like to mention that none of these opinions and none of the facts that they say tonight are reflections of any individual. This is a fun debate, and part of debating is arguing things that you might not necessarily agree with. Barakah Programs would also like to thank our prize sponsor Mubin from DesignStudio12.com. Design Studio aims to spread the love and the message of the Ahlul Bayt through art and design. DM them for orders or custom design. Now let's get to the fun part. I will now invite the first speaker of the affirmative team to kick off the debate.
صلى على محمد وآل محمد. Picture this. Your child is starting prep next year. They are your pride and joy. Your whole life is dedicated to ensuring your child is safe and taken care of. You haven't enrolled them in a school yet. You're unsure whether to send them to the local public school down the road or the Islamic school a few suburbs away. I'm here today to explain to you exactly why Islamic schools are always the way to go and should be every Muslim's parent's first and only choice. Islamic schools can greatly strengthen a child's sense of self-worth, pride, and cultural identity in a way that could never happen in public schools. A sense of identity comes not just from being out with other Muslim kids, but also by being submerged in a Muslim environment. The memories of hearing our precious adhan every day, multiple times, praying together as a united school community from all backgrounds, and reading and memorizing the Holy Quran, the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This cannot be compared to anything that you may remember from time in a public school. At an Islamic school, I've had the pleasure of visiting the morning bell rings at 9 a.m. every day. Soon after it, a beautiful nasheed on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His qualities is played over the speaker system. In a public school, you would never hear this. In fact, you would hear the latest pop music played, despite its often problematic lyrics, and you know exactly what I mean here. At an Islamic school, I've had the pleasure of visiting students in grade prep, onwards, and with 2 lessons a week on the following subjects: Arabic language, Hifz al-Quran, and Quranic tafsir. This is despite their level abilities or mother tongue languages. In a public school, you would never be allowed to cover this, let alone mention these topics. Now the argument may be made that teaching Arabic language, Hifz al-Quran, and Quranic tafsir can be done efficiently and effectively at home or at a weekend Arabic or Islamic school. Every parent in this room knows that there is little to no time to cover while balancing adequate time for family and fun. If you can do this, you're probably exhausted, depleted of energy, and don't get 8 hours of sleep every night. At an Islamic school I've had the pleasure of visiting, the timetable was designed in a manner where Dhuhr and Asr prayers can be completed without rushing for time. Quran and Arabic lessons can be completed without rushing for time, and Salat al-Jum'ah can be fully expressed and experienced each week without rushing for time either. Please enlighten me on any public school where Muslims can get this much religious freedom and inclusion. Growing up, I went to a white homogenous school in Auckland, New Zealand, that focused solely on academic achievement. The school culture was highly competitive, rigorous, and academically challenging one. There was no form of inclusion or support for those who struggled, required adjustments and additional support, let alone special needs. Religion was an afterthought at my school. Many students faced identity issues, struggled in a highly competitive, hostile environment, and had trouble maintaining relationships. The bullying that I faced for not looking the same as the majority of students was a traumatic experience for me, especially when 9/11 happened. It got even worse. This brings me to my next point of wanting to become a teacher to bridge the gap for those students who are the minority. Please give the following research finding your full attention. 105,000 waking hours, meaning hours awake, not asleep, are spent at school by the time their child is 18 years old. Let that sink in, 105,000 hours. All that time, your child's time must be spent in a positive, supportive way and dhikr-filled Islamic environment. There is no other option. This is the least of our duties to the younger generation. It's logical, it's a no-brainer. It's the best and the only choice. Islamic schools are the only options. Islamic schools are a better choice than public government ones. Finally, my dear brothers and sisters, let me ask you the last questions. When we live in a country like Australia that has given us freedom of religion and had allowed us to practice our Shia faith, unlike Saddam's oppressive regime in Iraq, why would you take the opportunity away from our precious yet vulnerable children? Salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. أحسنت.
Thank you, Yasser. Now we would like to invite the first speaker from the opposition team, Noor. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Despite the arguments presented by the opposition, we believe that these are not true. A sense of identity is not strengthened through being in a comfortable environment, rather when you are challenged.
Not only that, tafasir vary depending on the sect, and there are only 2 Shia schools within Australia. Let's compare apples with apples. Luckily, we have a team member who was raised in the same family, was in the same age group, and went to the same school. And both of you have become successful in your own rights, indicating the resilience in non-Islamic schools really does exist and does pay off. I am Noor, the first speaker of the negative. Tonight, we will be speaking against the topic that Islamic schools are better than non-Islamic schools. We believe that Islamic schools are not better than non-Islamic schools as they do not create a well-rounded individual equipped with all the tools necessary to function well as an adult in the Western world. I'd like to create an analogy that our team will be referencing throughout this debate. I'd like you to think of a toolbox. Within this toolbox, there are a variety of different tools that we can use for different purposes in different situations we encounter. As young Muslims living in the West, we need a variety of different tools in order to face challenges that are unique to us and the minority position we hold within this society. For the purpose of this debate, we feel the following arguments are pivotal in creating such tools within our Islamic youth. Non-Islamic schools cater for students of all abilities, whilst Islamic schools often fall short in doing so. Exposure to this diverse environment subsequently creates essential tools of humility, empathy, and understanding of people with different needs. For the second argument, I'll discuss how non-Islamic schools focus equally on academic, artistic, and athletic ability, whilst Islamic schools focus solely on academic achievement. By attending a non-Islamic school, students that are not academically inclined are not left behind, resulting in the essential tool of confidence in their own strengths. Our second speaker, Noor, will be adding upon the tools needed in order to be equipped to face life after school. Our final speaker, Rasud, will be summarizing our team's arguments and rebutting the affirmative. Schools are tasked with the vital role of developing a student's abilities in all aspects of life. Through a young Muslim's time spent at school, they will not only learn to cope with their own struggles, but also learn to socialize empathetically with others. Exposure to a diverse range of students with different needs leads to the social growth of an individual. Non-Islamic schools provide assistance to students with mental and physical disadvantages in the forms of extra classes, resource rooms, behavioral specialists, and medical professionals. Islamic schools, however, do not offer any of that. Children who attend Islamic schools their entire lives are rarely diagnosed. Unfortunately, a lot of Muslim parents aren't even aware that mental health is an issue. Although mental health may be mentioned in Islamic schools, from personal experience, it is never seen as a serious issue. Instead of advising students to go and get assistance, students are told to suppress feelings of instability and are told to focus on their religion. In contrast, governmental schools Victoria-wide dedicate one entire day every semester to ensure all their students are mentally managing by replacing regular classes with workshops, providing support and awareness of the issue. The ability to empathize and understand another person's hardships is a valuable tool that can only be attained through attending a non-Islamic school. Each and every one of you in this room possess a very different skill set to the person next to you. As a student, you have the right to distinguish your passions and strengths during your time at school. Many students attending Islamic schools are stripped away of this fundamental right. Islamic schools around Victoria focus on the importance of strengthening a student's academic capabilities, neglecting other vital parts of development, ultimately suppressing any other hobbies or interests. Victorian government schools state, each school usually offers between 20 and 30 subjects depending on the number of students, whereas Muslim schools tend to offer 15 subjects. The lack of opportunities and tools provided to students attending Islamic schools places them at a huge disadvantage. A school should have enough staff and equipment to cater for the passions of all its students. Non-Islamic schools offer after-school clubs, sports teams, and a wider range of electives to foster the interests of its students. If a child is enjoying taking part in a sport or hobby, then they should be encouraged to continue. It helps them develop a sense of resilience and overcome problems. This gives them a huge sense of achievement when they have mastered a new tactic by working hard and keeping focused. Strengthening a student's interests and hobbies creates a more confident, resilient, and determined individual. This tool is necessary to attain as Muslims living in the West, and it is only attainable through attending a non-Islamic school. Thank you.
Thank you, Noor. I also wanted to just clarify for those who might not know the family dynamic here tonight, but we do have Rusul and Yasser, who are siblings, and their niece Noor. So that was their little reference that they had during the debate. I would like to now invite the second speaker for the affirmative team, Haidar.
Hello. Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters. My name is Haidar. My name is Haidar. I'm your second speaker for the affirmative team. Just a reminder in case some of you fell asleep, but we are talking. The topic at hand is that Islamic schools are better than non-Islamic schools. I, as the second speaker, will start off by rebutting some of the cases made from the opposition's first speaker, as well as reaffirming the points our first speaker, Brother Yasser, has said, and then adding some new points of my own. I'd like to bring up some points that were made by the opposition. They're saying that there are only two one of the first things they said was there was only 2 Shia schools in Australia at the moment. And for this debate, I don't think that we can just look at statistics like that, in how it is today, rather than we should look at the greater scope of things, how things can evolve to this. If we start enrolling more of our, if our parents start enrolling more of our kids in Islamic schools, they're going to have more funding, and therefore more will be built. More Shia schools, more Sunni schools, more for anyone, even for cultures, for individual cultures. Another thing that was brought up was that really sparked interest in me was about the mental health resources. And it was mentioned that non-Islamic schools do cater to this, and although this is true to some extent, this is more pronounced for the well-funded schools, the high-up ones that you see always advertised around Australia, all of the billboards and stuff. We're here talking about the average school. If you compare the average non-Islamic school to the average Islamic school, you'll find that both can struggle in providing the correct mental health resources. That being said, the school Brother Yasser here works at, they do provide a lot of mental health support, such as psychologists, counselors, student support, and speech pathologists. Another point, and the last point that was made that I want to rebut is that they can build on extracurriculars, that non-Islamic schools provide a lot of extracurriculars for them, and then this is needed for them to grow. This is needed for them to grow and express a way of an expression. But let me ask you this: would you rather have 5 days a week where you can build on your Islamic values, and 2 days where you can do sporting, or 5 days where you can go kick a football and then have maybe 1 or 2 days, maybe 1 day if you're tired, on learning those Islamic values that make you a Muslim? I'd like to reaffirm the points that Brother Yasser made. He did say that at the start of their days, they're always reminded that the only reason that we are all here is because of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And they do provide a lot of those Islamic classes to reaffirm the beliefs. He said, I think 3 different classes about all that. And the most important thing that when we're integrating to any society, the class that we have is prayer times. Suddenly it's 12 o'clock and you have to step out for 10 minutes, 20 minutes to go to prayer time. If it's in the middle of class, you don't have the chance to do that. If you're stuck in classes for exams, in exam season, of course, you have to be stuck and you have to study. You won't have those times. If an Islamic school has your core mind and your goals in mind, they will allow for those times, whether it's exam times, whether it's earlier in the year. All right, now it's time to bring up my own points.
Yeah. For our ideas have always been fading out when it comes to society, not just us, but even the Christian beliefs as well. I'm sure you guys all know where I'm going with this. We'll have to talk about the LGBT community because this is an issue that we Muslims face when trying to integrate with the society. The Victoria Education Ministry recently passed a bill where students can clash with parents and even general practitioners if there's a disagreement in gender identity. What this means is if a child believes that they were the wrong gender, they can go above their own parent, above any medical practitioner, and make a decision to change their gender. And while, to some extent this is a child expression, we do need, those steps are at least there for a reason. Some people change their gender and do grow up to regret those decisions because they haven't had the right resources. They haven't even seen a doctor. These people was just straight off the edge. And that being said, I'd like to talk about a thing I struggled with. I grew up in a non-Islamic school in Auckland. I went to high school there, and personal identity is one thing that a developing mind needs to have. If 5 days a week I'm hanging out with Kiwis of multicultural varieties, I'm not being exposed to people who share my beliefs. I'm not exposed to people who have my interests at heart. We're all here for a selfish game, and that's what we believe. At least in an Islamic school, we can always be sure that those people will always have Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala above them. If it's not the students, because we can't expect every student to be a saint, we're all learning, we can expect those teachers as well. Those teachers will have those core values at heart and they'll express themselves that way. Over here, in non-Islamic schools, they barely even do background checks.
Time's up, sorry brother.
صلي على محمد وآل أحسن.
Thank you, Haydar. I would like to now invite our second speaker for the opposition, Noor.
محمد.
على محمد وآل محمد.
Hello? Assalamu alaikum, everyone. I'd like to just make a few rebuttals against the affirmative team here. It's been claimed that parents and family members fund the Islamic schools within Victoria and Australia, but it is not true because actually there's funding from outside countries, such as those in the Middle East, which have their own very specific political agendas, which makes it very difficult to control what our kids can learn as in political agendas. Secondly, we're talking about quality and not quantity of Islamic education. So having 2 days on the weekend could be more beneficial than having possibly 5 days during the week. So yeah, and also you can advocate for yourself in non-Islamic schools. I've seen it within my own school, where I went to a very white school, but we were able to advocate for a prayer room and use class time and to pray and be able to do that. So I think there's a lot of progression within society that there's no longer a need for scaremongering, and just open conversations would be more effective. It is also not wise to shelter our kids from these new things such as the LGBT community, because they will be exposed to it either way, and if we don't have our proper conversations with our kids, then it will be difficult for them when they leave school and be faced with something that they have never seen before. So I think being exposed to it is probably the best remedy, and just having open conversations about it will be more effective. Now on to my own arguments. As young Muslims living in the West, we need a variety of different tools in order to face challenges that are unique to us and the minority position we hold within this society. One of these tools I think you'd all agree with me on is the ability to stand up for oneself, to defend, differentiate, and critically appraise opposing views. This is not an easy skill to cultivate, and certainly not one that can come naturally. We as a negative team believe that this invaluable tool that every young Muslim should be armed with is not one that can be properly cultivated within an Islamic school. I think it would be feasible to claim that within an Islamic school environment, students are often not challenged or criticized for their views, nor are they made to be exposed to radically different ideas. This fairly homogeneous religious environment in which these students exist is often one that does not exceed the school gates. There's a verse from the Quran that I'd like to bring to life. Do the people think that they will be left to say we believe and they will not be tested? In this verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes it clear to us that merely believing is not enough. There is no real proof of one's faith unless it is tested. It is easy for us to claim that we know something for an exam, but when it comes to applying our knowledge in challenging situations, we often fall short of this claim. Another tool, in this verse, we believe that being in a non-Islamic school environment will equip us with the ability to prove to Allah that our faith goes beyond just our shahada or communal prayers at Islamic schools. Another tool we must arm ourselves with is the ability to make choices between what is right and what is wrong, what battles to fight and which ones to concede. Living in a society like ours, we must have the ability to take up arms in jihad an-nafs. This can be characterized into the struggle against one's nafs, the ego, wherein a person strives to overcome temptations, desires, and devil's whisperings. If one builds up the tools, we need to strive to internalize Islamic teachings through our acts of worship and devotion. If one builds up the tools in order to combat jihad an-nafs, then surely they'll be successful in life. With the right support network, that is the role of parents and a strong Islamic community outside of schools, such as this one, students will be equipped to overcome temptations and desires they may face in this non-Islamic environment. And this can only make them stronger as they face greater challenges in university and in the workforce. There's a famous quote from Imam Ali that states, "The harder the test, the greater the reward." While it may be seemingly attractive to send our youth to schools where we have the assurance that our Islamic faith is integrated within the curriculum, and that our kids will pray on time or learn the Quran in class, I can assure you that this comfort is short-lived. This comfort and reassurance will fade as soon as your child steps out the school gates, as soon as they graduate from school and go to university or enter the workforce. It would be naive to claim that Islamic school environments are free of all haram, that they reflect the perfect Islamic environment where kids will never be exposed to the things they may be exposed to in a non-Islamic school. No matter where we go or how hard we try, even the very best of Islamic schools will have a degree of haram. And kids will be exposed to this, whether we like it or not. In the case of non-Islamic schools, when Muslim kids see haram things happening in front of them, there exists a differentiation. At the end of the day, a young Muslim, equipped with the tools that we've mentioned, will be able to make this differentiation, and that this person who is doing the wrong things in front of them is different from myself, and they hold different beliefs and different values, and therefore we do not share this in common, and that's okay. This differentiation becomes more and more difficult for a child in an Islamic school who is not necessarily equipped with these tools and cannot make this important differentiation, since the people doing haram in front of them are those that share the same belief system. It becomes more justifiable for impressionable young people to commit these acts, knowing that their peers, other Muslims, are committing the same thing. This is a dangerous...
Time's up.
Sorry. That's pretty
Thank you, Noor. I would like to now welcome up the third speaker and last speaker for the affirmative team, Dave.
Assalamu alaikum, brothers, sisters.
Alaikum
The debate
salam.
at hand is a crucial one. The question is, are Islamic schools better than non-Islamic schools? so far the opponents have tried to mislead you into thinking that, well, the Islamic schools we have right now, 2 Shia schools in Australia, aren't doing as well as some of the well-established schools that are already here. Yes, the Islamic schools that you're referring to that may be less than 20 years old, started by migrants, haven't had the chance to catch up to the 100-plus-year-old grammar schools. That's right. But looking at how much funding they're receiving, just comparing how much funds they get with the little that they get, how much they're offering, is truly amazing. So just to give you some numbers, for example, Islamic schools can only charge their students 2 to 7K per student for a year. Whereas some of the highest grammar schools, like some of the ones that I went to, charge to 20 to 40K. Now, the way they get a lot of their highly academic students, for example, the way they got me, is they poach the students. They reach out to some of the highest achieving students academically or in sports, and they tell them, we'll bring you to the school and offer you a full scholarship. Do you want to do it? Do you want to save 20 to 40K? And it happens, and people fall for it, like I fell for it at the time, leaving an Islamic school. Now, there was an argument in there that was saying Muslims will start losing their values, or they will, as soon as they leave their Islamic schools, they will go and they will lose all of that. Well, let me tell you this. And within our course, the Muslims that we had, about 7 boys, stuck together, so much so that we would study together, pray together. We all went to Islamic schools at one point. For example, me, I left before graduating, but most of them had finished in Islamic schools themselves. We had such a bond together, we had such a strong identity that when we studied, we all managed to achieve great things, not just academically. One of our friends designed a program that was bought by Deakin Uni for about 100K. We had some other friends that did really well in sports, winning the university's futsal competition. The rest of us, out of 7, 4 went to medicine, 3 went to dentistry, and we continued to do well as we went with our degrees. Now, the other thing that was mentioned was in the Quran that if you go and you should put yourself in hard tests, well, that is not talking about putting our most vulnerable, our kids, our most vulnerable members of the community in the hardest test and telling them that, well, what we teach you at home is what you should be following, but what you get taught for those 105,000 hours that Yasser mentioned, from 9 to 3 o'clock, 5 days a week, for 13 years, at their most vulnerable stage, putting them in an environment that teaches them the exact opposite of what we try to teach at home. There are a lot of things in the Quran that will refute exactly what was said here. There is an ayah in the Quran, Surah Al-Furqan, in which the non-believing person on the Day of Judgment says, Ya waylata, wa waylata, ya laytani lam attakhidh fulanan khalila. And he's saying, woe to me, I wish I had not taken so-and-so as a close friend. Well, if you're not going to an Islamic school, how are you going to have good friends? You're going to have people that might be doing the wrong things, and you by default will fall into that too. There's a lot of hadiths too. Bihar al-Anwar, a hadith that tells you about avoid making friendships with transgressors and sinners, because evil creates evil. Now, what they've tried to do, the opposition, is they've tried to tell you, well, things are not doing so well for Islamic schools right now. But the reason that is so dangerous is that we're talking about our Islamic schools, a good Islamic school. Is that better for our kids than a good non-Islamic school? If we're comparing life for life in the same area, same demographic, can our kids benefit more in the Islamic school? And the answer is, of course, yes. So, for example, if we talk about in terms of the identity that Yasser talked about. So a lot of us, they would try to talk about non-Islamic schools offering things for everyone. Well, the thing that they can't offer is something for what we call a third identity that Yasser talked about. For example, a lot of us are either migrants or sons of migrants or second generation migrants that come into Australian schools, and we try to integrate. Well, and we at a very vulnerable age, we develop very weak identities. Well, in Islamic schools, they cater for the third identity. Everyone around you has that same identity as you. The parents themselves, this was Haidar's point, they create communities. For example, if we had a Shia school, we don't have a Shia school in Melbourne, for example. If we had a Shia school in Melbourne, then these same parents here can meet each other over extracurricular activities. It creates bonds that are beyond imagination. And that was a point that the opposition tried to take away, trying to say, well, they don't do that, they don't do any extracurricular activities. When many of them are trying with the funding they receive. And not to mention, so the final point that was mentioned by Haidar as well.
Sorry, Brother Leif.
Yeah.
Time's up.
Thank you, Dave. I will now welcome to our third speaker of the opposition, Rusul, and she will be our last speaker for tonight.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Okay. So, as your third and your final speaker for the night, I'm just going to address a few points that were mentioned by all of our opposing team members. Firstly, I don't think anyone was asleep during that debate, especially from the girls' side, because they were riveted by what we were saying. Secondly, there was a lot of emotive language used, but unfortunately, the validity of these arguments were weak and almost null. There's 105,000 hours affirming your beliefs when you're in school that is non-Islamic. There's 105,000 hours in school when you as a hijabi Muslim woman are explaining to people why you wear hijab, why you represent your community, why you're still wearing it, why you started wearing it at 9 years old. That's 105,000 hours that I would like to pursue rather than be just a sheep amongst a crowd. That's personally my opinion. Now, look, you can talk about students losing their values when it comes to going to a non-Islamic school, but the reality is you're not losing your values when you're reaffirming your beliefs and you're forced to explain yourself and justify. Why do you pray? Why do you fast? Why do you need to go to lunchtime, go and pray at lunchtime? Why do you need to do these things? Why do you believe what you believe in, especially in 9/11? And a lot of our generation did have to go through 9/11, and this is the whole comparison when we're talking about apples with apples. Both Yasser and I went to a school. We went to the same primary school, we went to the same intermediate and college at the very end, Maclean's College, if anyone's aware of it. Yes, it was a multicultural school. Yes, it was mostly Asian and Southeast Asian cultures that were present, so I don't know how Yasser looked different, but that's... Yeah, but look, it was one of those situations where you did have to justify, and I'll give him that, and you did feel different, and I'll give him that, but the reality is it both made us very successful members of the community. We're people that are very strong in our belief system, and we like to vocalize that, and we like to be the representatives of the next community and the generation. So, and we both have that value, and that didn't come from an Islamic school, so I'm just putting that out there. It came from parenting. So that's the other thing that needs to be considered. Really, the last thing that I wanted to mention when it came to listing Laith's friends and his achievements, that's not a true reflection of what the Islamic community is. I'm sorry, I have to say, it's more than this cohort of your classroom in year 13. I can't, or year 12 in Australia. So yes, it's all well and good to list your friends that you hung out together with at uni, but really the reality is when it comes to that stuff, you stuck within the same group rather than actually showing resilience and integrating. So that's where it becomes an issue. Now, moving on to my summary. It's going to be a bit more formal now. Okay. So in summary, When analyzing this topic of debate, my team and I really came to the conclusion that if you dig deep enough, this isn't about a school system or incorporation of a religion in school. The topic begs the deeper question of really how equipped are our children to advocate for themselves in moments of questioning. Do they have the tools in their toolbox to successfully navigate these issues? Will their school provide them with these tools? Our team solidly believes that non-Islamic schools challenges the student at every angle and forces them to look at their faith head on and assess, protect, and inform their non-Muslim peers of their religion. By putting our children in Islamic schools, we are choosing the path that encourages convenience but never resilience. And as Muslims, we all know from our history that convenience never results in strong characteristics, morals, or values. Quite the opposite, in fact. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ has said, "اطلب العلم ولو في الصين." His choice of China was intentional and strategic in that he chose a nation that was furthest away from what his people could possibly fathom. And it was a nation that was as different as possible to the Islamic Ummah at the time. This was done to encourage Muslims to seek knowledge from those furthest to you in comparison of languages, tradition, and even religions. Furthermore, another lesson that we have learned is from the Battle of Badr. The Prophet ﷺ offered freedom to those who were prisoners by either paying a ransom or by teaching 10 Muslims to read and write. This tells us that the Prophet encouraged education from those who were even their enemies during this time. Non-Islamic schools are, simply put, better at educating our children in a well-rounded and accessible way. They create empathetic understanding, well-rounded individuals that have the tools of governance, advocacy, humility, and open-mindedness. And when tested, these tools assist in the formation of true belief of the Islamic faith. And if you ask me, having a child equipped with such tools makes them an adult with a toolbox that can hammer through all challenges of life. Wassalam.
Thank you to all of tonight's speakers. I would like to invite everyone to vote by the QR codes around the room and that we will shortly put on the screen. There is 3 criteria. Select your team choice for each and submit. If you could try and stay seated while we do this, it'd be ideal as we have one more thing to get through. I'll give you a minute and then we will move on.
You got the presentation notes?
I'm not gonna put on this stream.
Brother Hussein, who has an exciting project to share with us at the moment. Thank you.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Some of you may or may not know me, Hussein Ali Fayal. And I've decided to present this project idea that I've had for a while to the community, and hopefully it's going to be a combined effort with all of us, inshallah. So what my proposal is we develop an app, an application. It will be a Ziyara app that will be pretty much a Google Maps app, and with the app, it will be it will have all the locations of the maraqid and the maqamat in all of the Middle East, inshallah. So in Iraq, in Syria, and Saudi Arabia, because there are thousands of these maqamat and these maraqid, and it's important that we collect these places all in a database where we'll be able to present it to consumers and have them access this app. So why do we need an app like this? So first of all, as I said, there's a lot of maqamat and maraqid in all around the Middle East. So we always go to our the classic Karbala, Najaf, Kalbiyah, but there's a lot of unheard maqamat and maraqid, and having them all in one database is would be very beneficial for us. Another thing is that a lot of us here are first generation Australians. So a lot of our parents have been raised in Iraq, and they know their way around the ziyarat. But for us, inshallah, we're going to be having our own families in the future, and we'll be traveling our own in Iraq. So having a maps app that will be able to provide us directions on how to get to these places is going to be beneficial for us and our future families, inshallah. And there's also a lot of unknown about the family. So we know a lot about the prophets, about the Imam, about the Ma'sumin. But what we don't know much about is the families of those Imam. So we've got the brothers of the Imam, the children of the Imam as well, besides the next Imam, the wives of the Imam as well, and the Ashab. And we don't know a lot of the resting places or the shrines of these places. So again, having an app where it'll be able to provide directions for us to get to those places is going to be important and beneficial for us as Shia. To move on. So for example, this, it's not very clear, but this is just an area 30 kilometers southeast of Al-Hilla, okay? And up there here, we've got the Maqam Imam Muhammad al-Baqir alayhi salam, and we've also got Marqad Sayyid Abdullah ibn Hassan al-Muthanna ibn Hassan al-Mujtaba. I guarantee you, 95% of us wouldn't know where these places are, okay? And so it's important to try to collect the data or the locations of all these places in one app, so it'll be easy for us to access those places. I think about 4.5 kilometers away is also the Marqad of Sharifa bint al-Hassan, who is known for curing the ailments and sicknesses. This is fake. This is another place as well. So here we've got, again, in the area of Hilla, we've got 3 different maqamat here. We've got Marqad al-Alwiya bint al-Hassan alayhi salam, Alwiya Zainab, Marqad Sayyid Ibrahim ibn Imam al-Ruba, and Marqad Sukayna bint al-Hassan, I believe. So these places are all within proximity, and you notice in those places, they're very isolated. These are rural communities, the rural towns, and you find that these maqamat and these maraqid are hidden in alleyways and in between buildings. So what's the solution? Okay, we build an app that that integrates all these individuals and their resting places in one app that's accessible for everyone. And so we can provide a biography, a background on these individuals, so we can learn more as well. And in the app itself, we can also allow easy access for ziyarat and du'as once we get to those places. So this is just a concept design that we've kind of created to try to visualize what it could look like. So for example, we're located inside the Haram in the Husseini, and this is what the homepage design could look like. So here we have that the Imam Abbas shrine is around 375 meters away. It's about a 5-minute walk. We've got a Tel Zainabiyya as well, 100 meters away, and indicated by this dot here. And once we'll be able to explore further about the information about Imam Hussein, who's buried here. So if we click explore further, it tells us the recommended a'mal that we can do in those places. So here we've got Ziyarat Ashura that we can read, and it'll indicate to us that it takes us about 10 minutes to read. Another idea that's been proposed is that for people who'd rather listen to the ziyarah rather than read it, we can actually add audio files recorded by members of our very own community. So anyone who'd like to contribute their recording may be able to record themselves, and we can upload their voice into the app. And here obviously we've got the ziyarah in Arabic as well. Next. And this is basically the main thing about the app. So let's say I'm here, for example, and I'd like directions to the Haram al-Husseini alayhi salam. I input, just like using Google Maps, we input our data, where we want to go, and it'll provide us with directions, the distance, and how long it'll take to walk or drive there. And we just click start, and it acts as a normal navigation app. Another example here, let's say we're in Al-Kadhim alayhi salam in Baghdad, and it tells us who's buried there, and we can explore further information about their biographies, the ziyarat, and the ad'iyah that we can do in those places. And we can also explore different towns, such as Karbala and Najaf, and see who's buried in these places. We also have a create feature as well, which has been proposed by my brother Ali Sha'ban, who's contributed to this idea. But we can have the sort of AI system where we'll be able to input into the app how much time we have. So for example, if I'm in Karbala and I've got 3 hours to spare, I'll tell the app that I have 3 hours to spare, and the app will generate a route for me. So for example, within 3 hours, I can go visit Imam Hussein, Imam Abbas, and maybe Tel Zainabiyya as well. If I've got 5 hours, it'll add extra. For example, visiting Al-Mukhayyam or the shrine of Hurr al-Riyahi. So again, that's also another concept that we can add into the app. And then in Arabic as well. And this is also some concept designs of what it could look like in night mode or dark mode. So what's the process and how we can build an app like this? So first step is collecting interest for this project, and this is what I'm doing here today. So I want to see who's interested. I want to hear what you'd like to add, what advice and feedback you guys can provide for me. In step 2, we begin inputting or collecting all this data into an Excel sheet. And then step 3, we can approach a software firm or developing company who can bring the app to life, and we pitch this idea to them. And then eventually we'll be able to publish and advertise the app, and we continuously update it with new places that we discover as well. So this is what the Excel sheet could look like. So we've got the name of the maqam or the marqad, and it's divided in countries as well. The location, and then the coordinates. And the coordinates is the important part because that's what we're going to provide to the software developers, and that's what they're going to pinpoint on the map to create our own map, a holy map. So for example here, we've got Maqam Abd al-Salih al-Khudr alayhi salam in the town of Al-Qasim, I believe. And fun fact, Al-Khudr has around 150 maqamat attributed to him just in Iraq. Next. So we find the map, the location of it, we right-click the coordinates, and next. And then we can paste it into the Excel sheet with the name, the location, and the coordinates. And again, once we publish more and more locations, we'll be sending that off to the developer, and we can create an app for the app for us. So how do we know where all these sites are, and where do we get our resources to know where these locations are? So we've got at Islam.org, their websites are really good. They have a list of, or exhaustive list of locations in Iraq where we can find these different places. And we can also contact our local sheikhs, our families and friends who might have been to places that we haven't been before. And obviously Google Maps as well. Just having a look through, we'll be able to pinpoint these different places. So eventually this app, it will require funding, okay? But that's not why I'm here today. But just some ideas on how we can provide that funding eventually is we can approach different sponsors such as businesses, TV organizations, having events that may be able to organize, we can organize and raise funds, advertisement maybe in the app, so any advertisement that we do produce can be reinvested back into the app or pay back developers. And then donations. Anyone who's interested in investing in this project, they can be provided credit into the app as well. So what's the future? So obviously, first step after we finish developing the app, it'll be advertising. I think that's going to be pretty easy. Alhamdulillah, we've got a lot of organizations here that we can advertise this app for in our different mosques. Alhamdulillah, I was at Masjid Hassan Mujtaba during Muharram this year, and the turnout was fantastic. And having that many people in one area where we can advertise this app through a video trailer, maybe in both English and Arabic, where everyone will be able to understand. We show them the features of the app, what it could look like, how to use it, will attract a lot of attention. We can send that sort of video trailer overseas as well to our connections in Canada, US, the UK, in the Middle East, and they'll be able to advertise the app as well over there. Number two is having an all-in-one Quran and Dua app. So the main feature of the app is a Maps app, but having a Quran and Dua app as well integrated would be really good as well. And this can also garner attention from the people in our community who'd like to record their Quran recitation or their Dua recitation, and we can upload their audio files into the app. So that will bring more community progress into the app. And then finally, we can also have connections with the Atabat. So eventually, if the app gains popularity, we can approach the Atabat in Karbala or in Najaf, who will be able to import live data into the app. So for example, they'll be able to provide information on what shuyukh are reading or are giving lectures in the haram, how long it'll take for ziyarah to occur, how busy it is, because in Google Maps, I'm not sure if you guys have noticed, but it tells you how long it'll take for you to get to certain places based on the amount of traffic there is. It's the same thing that we could do with the app. Other ideas that have been put forward is having the maraqid of the ulama as well, not just the ma'sumin. So I want to hear from you guys. I want to know how much interest you guys have, if we can make this a reality, what ideas you have to put forth, any criticism as well. So I think the next slide, there's a QR code, which I'll leave up until after the debate while everyone's having pizza. And Charlotte, you guys will be able to scan and then provide your own input. And we can also gather interest on who wants to work in inputting data into that Excel sheet. So it'll make the job very easy, and we can progress with the app as well. Next. So inshallah, I hope you guys will join me. And I'm just going to leave off with one last thing. So it's the hadith by Imam Ali alayhi salam, which says, "Elzimu jama'ata wajtanibu al-furqa." So remain with the community and abstain from separation. So inshallah, you guys will join me as a community in helping with this app and developing it with the shafa'a of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, inshallah, for the love of Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam. عليكم السلام ورحمة الله.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل.
Thank you, Brother Hussein. I'm sure you'll have a lot of support. Now for the part that everyone is waiting for. I would like to thank both of our teams tonight for taking the time to write up their speeches and being here tonight. Everyone did an amazing job, but of course there will only be one winner. So tonight, the winner of the debate is Rusul and the Noors. Can you please stand up? So they will be given these trophies that were made by Mubin from Design Studio 12. They've also received gift cards as a token of appreciation. Can I also just have the Halal School also stand up, please? I can't say your name seriously, I'm sorry. Come on up. Thank you to everyone. We will be having pizza shortly. We will be having the men's at the front and the women's at the back. Thank you for everything tonight.
Stay.
Yeah, there you go.